Mount Everest. Oh, amazing. It's like being on top of the world. Productiv, security bow, welcome to 17,500 feet. We're here at Everest. I have Everest just over my shoulder. Everest base camp just down there. This is where it starts.
So we're basically sitting in the backyard of Mount Everest with Josh Mullis and Bill Harmer and Ruth Rafalovich. Really lucky to have Josh here, who runs InfoSec at Productiv, one of our customers. And Bill, who's the operating partner and CISO at our main investing firm, Craft Ventures. And then Ruth, who's our VP of Partnerships and Business Development. We were actually just talking about it like yesterday, where it was just a throwaway idea 10 months ago when we were at RSA, right? I think you guys were sitting next to one another.
Across from each other, yeah.
Yeah, and Ruth was there. Like, how did that conversation pan out? Like,
I think we were just talking about love for travel. So this makes country number 39 for me. Obviously, Ruth's traveled all over the world. Bill's done quite a bit himself, and so we just talked about the love of travel. And Ruth brought up, well, you know, we've kicked around the idea for a long time of like we should have some of our customers come out to Nepal and beautiful Kathmandu and Everest. And I was like, well, if that list ever goes out, please put my name at the top of it.
I think Josh said, "Don't make the offer because I'll say yes." I'm like, I'm known to go wherever somebody offers.
yeah, and one thing Ruth and I have come to learn with security leaders, GRC leaders, folks in the space is like, you guys are really adventurous. like you know, some of the most adventurous people into some of the most extreme like sports and hobbies and activities. And why do you think that is? Actually, I've always been like super curious about what makes like CISOs and security leaders so risk-seeking in their personal lives.
I think if you take enough risks and drive enough adrenaline in your personal life, when you come to work and have an incident, it's easy. There's no spike. It's the only thing I can think of.
It's all balance, right?
Exactly,
so
yeah.
at work, everything is risk mitigation.
Yep.
So you got to balance it somewhere. So in personal life, you just kind of swing the other way.
You're still mitigating risk. You're just moving that needle way farther over.
How was the adrenaline today?
It was a lot. I think from 5:30 this morning, everybody was just buzzing.
I have been saying this since I was sitting at the airport in San Francisco. I don't normally get nervous or jittery or tweaked about travel, and I have been just riding the edge the whole time, thinking about what we did this morning. Just because you don't know, right? You hear horror stories, you hear success stories, and you're just like, where am I in this one, right? So we mitigated risk as much as we could, you know, Diamox and some Excedrin and drinking lots of water.
I don't know, but Bill, you're also watching like Everest documentary.
I watched the most heinous documentary before coming here. I thought, oh, Everest, it'll be a cool movie. No, 11 bodies left on the side. You know, it's like, okay, that was not good. So I think it's just us. It's the personality type seems to gravitate to this role. Maybe it's because we can handle it. Yeah. Maybe it's the flip side that we can just handle it.
Yeah. Maybe it's not that, like you said, right? Maybe it's not that CISOs are like super adrenaline seeking. Maybe it just selects those type of people for that role. You're sort of like self-selecting into you just love getting that Slack ping in the incident response channel.
Yeah, you think about CISO burnout, right? Average lifespan of, I get these headhunters flinging me emails going, oh, you've been at Craft for just over 2 years. Average lifespan of a CISO is 2 years. Yeah, not me. Like if you go back and look at the history, 7 years at Success Factors. I was 7 years at Critical Path. I was 4 years at Manulife. I was 5 years at Zscaler. I don't burn out that way because I think that's the personality type that we can handle this.
Yeah, I was 12 years at PwC. It just, I don't know, you can have no problem throwing yourselves into it, kind of understanding like this is the situation. Yes, there's a lot of pressure, but being able to maintain sort of a calm state going through it. And you got to have thick skin. And as I tend to joke with my wife, if I had feelings, maybe that would have hurt them, but thankfully I don't have them, so works out.
Yeah, Josh, for you, like one thing like that's so fascinating to me about your career is you went from like a almost 400,000 person organization, like world renowned, working with some of the biggest companies in the world, to a fast growing startup, like limited scope, size, operational capacity. And you're mentioning the other day, like just the ability to go in there and then just fix stuff. Like, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that was probably the first major lesson I had to learn, moving from always focusing on the enterprise side, where there's, I don't know if I want to go as far as say a lot of bureaucracy, but there's a lot of checks and balances that you have to work through. There's a lot of people management. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. And I think it was my first or second week, and I was surveying the land and said, this one process over here, this is not good. Like who do I have to talk to? How many steps do we have to do to change it? Like, are we talking like weeks, months? And my boss, the CIO at the time, said, no, you own it, just change it. I was like, right now? He's like, yeah. I'm like, awesome. Send an email out starting Monday. This is what we're doing going forward. And the whole company went, great, we're behind you, let's go. And it was just the agility that you find in tech startups is refreshing. Everybody's looking to move fast. Everybody wants to do the right thing. They want to take care of the customers. Productiv's motto is earn customer love, right? So like to do that, you have to start with earning customer trust. And so that starts with having good foundations and being transparent in things. And so everybody from the account executives all the way up to executive leadership said, great, if this is the right thing for us, then let's do it. So it was good.
That's an amazing ability for Josh to be able to do that, because you see a lot of these executives come out of big companies. They want to try the startup thing because it sounds cool, and they bring that process with them and try to implement because it's all they know. And it kills them because they have these big processes. They need all the oversight. They need all the governance. And the startup's going, no, do and move on. So the fact that you adapt to that is amazing.
Bill, for you, like you have, I think, one of the most, at least from some of the CISOs that I've heard, like one of the most enviable jobs, right? Like you
sitting in
I think all four of us do at the moment.
I agree that I have one of the most enviable jobs.
I mean, not only you've earned it, right? Like through your various tours of duty. You just mentioned some of them: Success Factors, Zscaler, and now you're at Craft. Like, there's so many CISOs, so many folks that try to make a transition from this sort of like true operating role to one where you're taking that experience and knowledge and helping other startups. Like, how are you able to do that?
I think it's the lessons in the startups, right? Knowing that not every startup is the same, and what I've done in the past may not be exactly right in the future. So sitting with whoever the portco is and whatever the problem is, and listening a lot more and understanding where they're at in their journey, what it is they have in place, what the problem is, and then backing a helpful solution into it and trying to guide them, because 9 times out of 10 I'm not talking to a security person. I'm talking to the head of engineering. I'm talking to a CISO or a CTO or a CEO. So they'll be uncomfortable that they don't understand the subject matter fully, And when people don't understand subject matter fully, but they're responsible for it, you can get them defensive really quickly. So just bringing them along and guiding them in an educational way with sort of that non-judgmental approach, I think it just works. And I learned a lot of that through like Manulife, because that was a political place, and I had to learn the nuances of how to talk to somebody and get them to bring my idea back to me.
Yeah. You had some early startup experience as well,
Yep,
right?
since '97.
Yeah, since '97. So you've seen several, we can call them bubbles, we can call them sort of like these sort of like fervorous market moments. Let's go back to like 99, 2000, or what we just went through in 2021 and what we might be going through right now with AI. How are those comparing for you?
So like 21 was very reminiscent of 99, right? It was, I think the difference is 99 was the birth of the web, the birth of solutions. Like we were building a SaaS-based solution in 99. But it was very frothy, it was very vibrant, and a lot of money was going to a lot of places without a lot of due diligence. And that's what was happening in 2021. A lot of money going out, not a lot of due diligence happening. But when you look at AI, so if you think about 20 or 2000, sort of the birth of the commercial web, 08, that birth of mobile, and now AI. AI is everything those other ones were, and possibly more, simply because there is literally nothing I can think of that AI will not touch, for better, for worse. Like it'll make things better, it'll make a lot of things worse as well, but it has the ability, because it's supposed to replicate a human brain, it can touch any idea, any vertical, any process, any idea. So we live in amazing times for what's going to come.
Well, it's kind of the fruition of 12 years of chasing the concept of like a true data lake, right? They're big data tried it, Hadoop tried it, all these others took their hand at, well, if we just had more data.
Yeah. And a way to ingest it.
And a way to ingest it, yeah, and a way to do something with it.
Yep.
And this is kind of the first sort of breakthrough of, oh, now we finally can. Okay, well now what can we do with it? And to your point, there are very few things that with enough data and enough analytics on it, you can inform something, whether it's better processing, better manufacturing, better shipping and logistics, better sports. How much does AWS love to tout on NFL, every Sunday of sports insights powered by AWS. It's literally being applied to better coaching and better player health, so things that you just 5 years ago wouldn't have thought about the application for. We're now at the point where, okay, well let's see what else we can throw the data at and see what comes out of it. So it's an interesting time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Josh, for you and Productiv, one thing that's really I'm really interested in is you guys have your own AI product that you guys are deploying with customers, but you're also procuring products that have AI. And your posture as you sell your AI products and as you procure has to be really different. How are you sort of like, as the head of InfoSec, helping the company ensure that they have this sort of best practices as they're deploying AI with customers, winning maximum trust, but also making sure that as you're, incorporating vendors and incorporating tools with AI, ensuring you're like those vendors are able to earn your trust as well. How are you balancing that? Because I can imagine that's pretty tricky.
I actually don't know that the posturing is different. And I mentioned one of our core values is earn customer love, right? And so part of that is having empathy for customers and the questions they're going to have and the concerns they're going to have. And so when we built out Sidekick, our AI capability, there was a lot of partnership. One of our lead engineers, Adam, absolute rock star, he didn't just build it in a silo. He and I have spent hours and hours and hours talking about, okay, what are the potential risks? What are the architecture behind it? What are our customers going to be concerned about? what things like in my security assessments of our vendors have I cared about? Well, let's go ahead and button that up. Let's go ahead and proactively get in front of it. Let's go ahead and start answering some of those questions. Let's put together documentation. Let's let's get out there and start having those conversations before a little icon pops up and says, hey, enable it, right? Or, I've seen some of the vendors that have actually rubbed folks the wrong way, rubbed me the wrong way, because they tried to just, keep it quiet, and all of a sudden it's there. Well, I don't know where my data is going. I don't know what model you're built on. I don't know what access controls you have in place. We haven't had a conversation at all. That's not how you build that rapport and trust with a customer. And so we try to be empathetic about that. We try to get out there early on, and I feel like we have pretty good parity with both the things that I care about from our vendors and the things that we've already seen good traction with our customers saying, thank you for going ahead and sharing this information with me. These were the questions I was going to ask, but you've already given them to me. So that's kind of how we think about it.
Yeah, it's perhaps a slower path, but maybe a stronger one, right? With customers, you're being more transparent, so it might take a few more calls, a few more points of alignment. You're probably having to get on some of these customer calls
Totally.
to explain it to your customers, right?
Yeah, and it's definitely an investment. It's an investment in upfront time to build that type of documentation. It's an investment if they want to hop on and have a conversation, but we feel that it's the right thing to do. And by the way, the market's going to change over time, right? This is an early phase, early adoption approach. New customers going forward, we will just have it on by default because it is inherent to our product and it's part of what we're going to sell you. And so we won't have to go quite through as many steps to get there. Like it'll just be baked into the upfront security assessment that you all are going to help with. And so I think over time the market will get past this initial fear, this initial additional diligence that's being performed. But that's not where we are right now. We have to be realistic about where we are.
One thing I've been curious about, Bill, is so much of the evaluation of a company is, at least historically, has been predicated on the data that they have, right? You'll have companies come in like, look at all the data that we have, all the ML and AI things we can do with it, and but at the same time, like you really can't do that much with it, and you got to be transparent with your customers, and so there's this sort of like, it almost feels like companies that are pitching to investors are saying a different thing versus companies that are pitching to customers, right? And how do you look at that? Like when companies are coming to you and you're helping craft with their due diligence on some of these companies, like how are you assessing the data that they have? Like, is it actually driving a value and valuation for that company?
Some yes. So if you look at a typical SaaS contract, there's usually a thing in there that says we're not going to use your data for any purpose other than to make our product better. And that always referenced things like metrics, speed, response time within the application. They could make it better, but that's an open statement as well. So you can make it better by adding an AI copilot. You're making the product better, and you're using that data, and maybe it's anonymized in some form or fashion. So I think there's some that are doing that. There's some that I think Google went the other way and screwed up themselves, where they can sell the data to other, because they have the advertising ability to sell that data, but they can't use it themselves because of those contracts. So they might actually, I don't know if it's true, but they might have locked themselves out of their own data, which would be hilarious if they did. But it's really, you have to, I think, look at what data they have and then what can they legally do with it, right? If they've got a strong contract where they can't use it for an AI model, then the AI bit's not really going to work. Most of the stuff I've been seeing has been new AI products that don't have a lot of data behind them. I'm very keen to see what's going to happen out there, kind of like with Zscaler acquiring Avalor, because Avalor was that data fabric. Zscaler has massive amounts of data. Now what's going to happen? Is that the precursor to some sort of AI built tool that's going to go on top of it?
As I said at the beginning of the conversation, we're sitting here in front of Mount Everest in the Himalayas, surrounded by some of the most beautiful mountains. you know, we're entering a very particular theme, a phase change for Security Pal, where we sort of finally, in many ways, understand our place in the world. You know, for a long time, we were this business that was just, for lack of a better term, filling out security questionnaires. And then we eventually entered the TPRM space. So we're helping companies with security, conduct security assessments of their vendors as well. But over the past year, we've been trying to establish this category of customer assurance. Sort of in the last mile of a commercial transaction, it's not just enough that somebody wants to buy your product. It's not just enough that there's budget set aside and the legal docs are taken care of. It's that security and privacy and GRC part of it. What does customer assurance mean to you, given like your different perspectives on it and journeys that you've taken, and how has it changed? And maybe I'll start with you, Josh.
Sure. We were talking about this over dinner a couple of days ago. It's the challenge has always been the trust but verify concept within security. Security questionnaires really started gaining traction, as we talked about, around GDPR and needing to understand the controls specifically that you had in place. The controls don't necessarily provide that understanding of the true risk mitigation or the maturity of those controls. It just says, SOC 2 report, hey, here's my inventory of controls that we've put in place. An auditor comes in and says, yep, you're doing exactly what you said you were going to do. But it doesn't really take into account that whole level of risk mitigation. So as a customer, what I want to know is what is risky to me about our relationship? As we talked about, every relationship has an inherent risk to it. How do I understand quickly what that inherent risk is? How do I understand and validate that you actually have mitigations in place and the mitigations you say you have in place are actually effective? And as quickly as possible, get down to that level of residual risk where I can make that determination. Are we comfortable accepting that incremental level of risk by doing business with you? And it's been a challenge, right? I mean, that's why, for lack of a better approach, people are still sending questionnaires around and kind of just taking it at face value. And like, if you really, it's really only the big players, the Fortune 100 that have an army of risk assurance individuals that they can say, they'll kind of force their way into your contract of saying, we can actually come audit you. Sometimes they do. They throw their own pen testers at you. But as you said, that just delays the process. I mean, we recently closed on a very major customer, and it was a 9.5-month sales cycle. The last 3.5 were held up by security. Because it just took them that much time to actually get on, and we had to show them configurations, and they came back with requirements, and they carried enough weight that we actually had to change some of our architecture and implementations and things like that. And it just dragged it out. And if you really start looking at, great, there's a high level of ARR associated with that. Everybody gets the deer in the headlight dollar sign. But if you really start doing the math on the number of human hours, human resource hours we had to throw at it, well, it probably kind of comes out in a wash compared to a lot of our other vendor or other
Sometimes
customers.
you're just buying a name, right? You
That's
just
it.
need that name on the logo sheet.
Yeah, that's it. So I don't have the answer, and I'm excited to see you all trying to tackle that. I'm excited to see where you take it, but it's definitely a challenge, and it's drastically slowing down the sales cycles right now.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating part, right? Because you've got a champion and a potential customer. There's clear need. There's budget. There's a verbal commitment. There's this sort of momentum, right? To sort of implement, and then it just comes to a screeching halt. It's like slamming on the brakes.
Usually
on
Friday afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. And that it also creates a lot of frustration too, right? One of the things that Security Pal always notices whenever we go into orgs is there's always this sort of interesting tension between revenue organizations and security organizations and GRC organizations, where each of them are not necessarily understanding what the roles of of the other organizations are, and why can't you guys just get this done? Like, and
Well, I think what's really interesting is different organizations empower different ones of those functional areas differently. So like some, and it's usually the ones that have gotten caught with their hand in the cookie jar a couple times, have drastically ramped up their security team and over empowered them to a degree where it's no longer about, okay, security people sometimes forget we're there to enable the business to operate securely, right? So like the answer should never be no. Well, generally shouldn't be no. It should be, what do we need to do in order to get that level of confidence
Yes,
to enable
and
you
here's
to do it?
how.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you can be prescriptive, right? No. Like if you want to move forward, these are the things that this vendor needs to do, right? And that's where that conversation really comes in, and that's what we saw with that large provider. But too many, you see some of the organizations where it's like the business going the other way, the business way overpowers security, and security screaming, this is not okay. This is high risk. And they've just been told, no, business has to keep moving, you can't slow it down. So you have to have a balance in there. And I think we're slowly working towards a better equilibrium, but we're not there.
Well, I think that's why the security, like the CISOs, have to be brought closer to the business decisions, right? The seat at the table needs to be there, because CISO should not be making decisions about security. Security is a tool, right? And it's to achieve a goal. The goal is typically privacy, for whatever, marketing, finance, new plans, personal data, whatever. And it's all about the acceptable risk to the company. So the board is setting the risk profile for the company, and it should be brought down. And at that point, this is why I've always said, I want the CISO title to go away. I want it to be a risk officer, because risk should govern the approach that we do, and it should be based on the knowledge of security with the the goal of a privacy structure for the ultimate risk profile that the company wants. That's the trifecta that should be there, because then prescriptive is one thing. Like I've had companies like Siemens and Bosch shove things down our throat on prescriptive. You will do this. And there's no point in me doing this for one company, because every time you do one off, you increase more risk, because there's a chance you will get it wrong for that one or for everyone else. It's better if I find out, what is your goal? Why do you do this? What is the outcome that you're looking for? And how do I do the same? How do I bring that same mitigation with a process that I give to everybody? Sometimes if the contract's big enough, I do that prescriptive and I do it for everybody else, and then I answer everybody else the same way. But it's time that we fundamentally start changing, because Chief Information Security Officer has two problems with it. One, it's information, and there's a lot of things missing. Physical to start with, right? And it's security. And this is not about security. This is about risk. Security is a tool that you implement to achieve privacy, which eventually hits your risk profile.
I love the point that you made about how do we empower security leaders? How do we empower GRC leaders? How do we make this a role that's grounded in risk? And risk is you can quantify risk, right? It can actually, if we do a good job of measuring and turning it into metrics, we can actually quantify it and make very smart decisions across an organization. Ruth, you've been working with a lot of our customers, and bringing all these leaders together to think a little bit differently about how we approach, the CISO world, right? Through the Security Pal Council. What are some of the things that that we've been doing, or we plan to do with some of the leaders that we could do to support them better?
On the council side?
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm super excited about what we're doing on the council. There's been a request from customers for a long time. We want to talk to other people that are solving this problem, whether they're on the GRC side, the revenue side, or the security side. Are we doing this right, or are we addressing how we're addressing it internally on the organization? Are other people doing it better? What can we do differently? And so there's been a strong request to meet other people in the industry around security reviews, around just the process. And so everybody's so excited about this community that we're building, whether it's on the GRC side, on the security side, or on the revenue side.
And revenue's critical to this. Like, this discussion doesn't happen without revenue. And that, I think, is the piece that's always been missing, that we never mix revenue into our decisions, right? We always just sort of look at it, what's the chance we get compromised? Okay, there's a chance we get compromised, but what does that cost us? And that's where we start making our proper decisions.
Yeah, or what does it cost us when we can't provide that assurance in a timely manner, or we're saying no to something that we might easily be able to say yes to, but the revenue leader doesn't have a good relationship with the security leader. The security organization's siloed, right? Because they've been told to go do your thing, and also answer questionnaires occasionally, right? And this has sort of been like one of our biggest insights, which is that historically, security, GRC, legal, revenue, even product marketing, in many ways, like, they didn't have to talk to each other as much as they're having to now, right? Like, all of those orgs are now involved. So a customer will ask for data localization, for example, right? And the salesperson on the call will say, yeah, of course we have that. Of course we have data localization and APAC. And, you know, the security leader will find out that was promised. And then you'll have to talk to product and engineering about how feasible that is. And then you'll have to talk to product marketing about, hey, like, once we do ship this, what sort of impact is it going to have across our ICP, ideal customer profile, existing customer base? You'll have to obviously talk to legal. You'll have to talk to GRC. What sort of controls, governance? You didn't have those conversations happen at all before, because customer assurance, like the security review, the security questionnaire, was almost an afterthought. I remember closing this deal before GDPR in my previous company. It was a cancer biotechnology company, right? Like, and you'd imagine in that space, like, they'd be very concerned about like security and IP and data. And I remember, like, without even red lines, I got like the contract signed by like the main, and like there was no security check, no nothing. I ended up finding out that there were like a few security questions that they had like 6 months after, or like while we were implementing, and the world completely changed after GDPR and all these new laws, and that's an important sort of like question and topic I've been trying to wrestle with, which is like, why do you guys think all these regulation and all of this like friction is happening at this current moment in time? Like, what is propelling it? What is so unique about technology today that's causing so much friction, so much terrain to navigate, so to speak, as opposed to before?
I think it's because it's ubiquitous, and because we're seeing the globalization of everything. So governments are finding ways to claw it back and hold on to it, because they realize data is the control. There are aspects that they'll use that look like positive for their citizens, GDPR. We've had this discussion. GDPR was an answer to losing business, because companies were throwing their hands up going, I cannot comply with 28 different interpretations of a non-law, right? It just doesn't work, because you were one-offing every country, because every country wanted to be better than somebody else. Everybody used to say, we'll use Germany, and that's the standard for privacy. And it worked for about 8 months or a year. And then the French went, no, we're better. And the Italians went, no, we're just different. And you were scrambling with these things that conflicted with each other. And I think as more and more data is collected, because there's some astronomical number of petabytes that hits the internet every single day, that people are truly realizing that power comes from data. So they need to put controls on it. So you'll continue to see laws, the presidential's decree on AI, the European AI laws. Those are political movements. Like they really are not out to make the product better, to make this ecosystem better. They're if anything, hampering it in some cases. But those are political moves. So because it's such a core focus, because we have educated enough people around privacy of PII, it's now extending out, I think. I think that's why we're seeing so many regulations.
Parts of it are an attempt, and I'm not commenting good, bad, or ugly, but it's an attempt at enforcing accountability. Because I actually don't think we've hit critical mass yet. I mean, we are seeing day after day after day, every time you look at a headline, largest compromise ever, largest compromise ever. It's kind of out of control. And so all these, the highly visible ones are the ones like GDPR because they're kind of generally applied, right? But, the feds have been trying to enforce controls and regulations around the financial sector for years. The Office of the Comptroller, the NYDFS, I think, came out a few years ago, attempting to get a handle around the financial sector. More healthcare requirements are going in because companies aren't, they're not a single person, right? They don't have morals. And so assuming that companies are going to do what's in the best interest of the general population is misplaced, right? And so they're, again, not commenting on, I don't think we found the right solution yet, but these regulations are an attempt to start to curtail some of that and drive accountability, because if you don't, it's always easier to just sign the contract.
Yeah, in fact, the health industry is an interesting one because they have a lot of legacy laws in there, like validated systems. And validated systems are very important, because if you are making a drug, you want to know exactly what's going to happen. Or if you're going to do something to a patient, you want to know exactly what's happening. So if you make a change to it, you have to revalidate the system. But as they did not, comprehend when they put it together, a security patch to a machine is changing the system. You would have to revalidate it. And it's like a $15,000, $20,000 process. Picture Patch Tuesday. If you had to revalidate every time. And that's why they used to do those enclaves, like the air-gapped places, systems in hospitals.
Still find XPs.
XP, SP3, Service Pack 3 running, unpatched, unsupported, because it works and they know what it is. But too easy to bridge nowadays, right? They were having to glue USB ports closed, but near field coming along, or somebody accidentally plugging something in, and it just jumps the gap, and then viruses are getting in, or access is getting in. So it's really interesting as they layer on these new things. They should really be thinking about updating and addressing some of the legacy things that are causing problems with them.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that happens, right? But it's wishful thinking. I'm always reminded of that, like, Milton Friedman quote. There's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program, and I think you'd probably say that about regulation as well, right? Because it's so hard to change something, because once it gets passed, there's so many layers of incentives, special interests that are relying on that for one thing or another, billable hours or whatever it might be. And so
the number of laws we have on books in random states that date back to the 1800s that you can drag out about, walking naked with a pig is illegal in whatever state.
Next thing you know, you have a microstate.
Exactly.
But the insight that we just had, which is that, like, it's actually been like one of the motivations for Security Pal as well, because in many ways, like, the last company that I founded kind of died because we couldn't navigate this process very well. We kept getting hit with these long security questionnaires after GDPR and didn't have enough time or resources to complete them, even though we had a good product. and we didn't want anybody to have to go through that pain. But your point about data is global, and a lot of these nation states, nation states got a lot of their power and authority from controlling trade. Most trade happened physically, like you literally physically transported goods, and you had physical control over people. Well, the internet kind of like makes it so that you don't have to interact with any government entity whatsoever, right? Get a room, throw Starlink, and start making money immediately, and you don't need to
We tried
interact
to use
with.
geopolitical laws on an environment that has no borders. Like even the Chinese wall leaks.
Yeah.
Right. You can get through it.
Yeah.
It's definitely, and just sort of back to that companies dying on that hill of questionnaires. I think the first thing I said to you when I met you and found out what Security Pal did was, I wish I had you when I was at Success Factors, because we were doing over 100 a month.
The very first, see, I don't think I meant to tell you this yesterday. The very first security questionnaire I ever had to do for Productiv was almost 600 questions long and took us almost 20 hours to complete. Because my sales engineer took about 8 hours, I took about 8 hours, and then I had to spend probably another 4 hours with the engineering team to validate some of the things. 20 hours. Wow. Just to answer a security questionnaire, not to actually mitigate more risk, not to...
And nobody read it.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody glanced through it looking for the number of no answers.
Yep.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.